On the night of March 8, 2014, like a shadow, the world was enveloped in mystery. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370, a Boeing 777, vanished without a trace, taking with it 239 lives. Imagine the scene: passengers settling in, smiles and farewells, and within minutes, everything disappears. What could have happened that early morning? As the aircraft flew across Southeast Asian skies, a crucial communication was lost, and the radar abandoned it. What followed was a frantic search across vast stretches of the Indian Ocean, but the wreckage, if it exists, remained hidden in the depths. What led to this tragedy? A mechanical failure? An act of desperation? Or perhaps an external intervention? Each theory more absurd than the last, but all stemming from a single point: the search for answers. The pain of the families, the uncertainty of the experts, and the echoing silence of the vast blue. What really happened to MH370? The mystery persists, and the questions only grow. Prepare to dive into this enigma that defies logic and reason. It was a calm night in March 2014, and I clearly remember the moment Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur, bound for Beijing. The plane, a Boeing 777, carried 239 people on board, and the expectation was for a routine flight, like so many others that had happened before. During the initial communication, everything seemed normal. The pilots were in contact with air traffic control, and the routine of an international flight was underway. However, shortly after takeoff, the situation took an unforeseen turn. Soon after, the radar screens began to flicker, and suddenly, the plane disappeared. The disappearance was so abrupt that it left everyone in shock. Malaysian authorities were quickly notified, and an enormous search effort began. What should have been a routine operation turned into an unprecedented mystery. The first thing to do was to trace a timeline, noting every step and every movement of the flight. The last communication with air traffic control was at 1:19 a.m., and within minutes, the plane vanished from the radar. What had happened? The questions started to arise, but the answers were few. The search operations were massive and involved several countries, including Australia, China, and the United States. The search area initially focused on the South China Sea, where it was believed the plane might have crashed. As time passed, the search expanded to the Indian Ocean, and the technologies used ranged from reconnaissance planes to underwater sonar. The uncertainty and vastness of the ocean made the task nearly Herculean. Every day that passed without a concrete lead only increased the frustration and anguish of the victims' families. The search was marked by dramatic moments and frustrating discoveries. Thousands of square kilometers of ocean were scanned, but what was found was mostly just floating debris. Authorities faced logistical, financial, and technical challenges. The amount of data to be analyzed was colossal, and the lack of any sign of Flight MH370 made the situation even more complex. For those following the story, search updates were a mix of hope and despair. What should have been a simple passenger flight became one of the greatest mysteries of modern aviation. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the timeline of MH370's disappearance grew darker. The victims' families eagerly awaited answers, but the search seemed endless. What had happened to the plane? Where was it? These questions hung in the air, and uncertainty became a constant in the lives of all involved. The search operations were a true marathon of efforts. Immediately after the disappearance, the Malaysian government mobilized its armed forces and enlisted the help of several countries. What followed was an unprecedented international effort, with ships and planes from various nations joining the mission. The initial area chosen was the South China Sea, but as days passed and evidence mounted, it became clear that the focus needed to change. What many didn't know at the time was that MH370 had made an unexpected turn and followed a route that led it toward the Indian Ocean. As time went by and the lack of concrete answers persisted, theories about the disappearance of MH370 began to proliferate like mushrooms after the rain. The first and perhaps the simplest was the possibility of mechanical failures. As the search progressed, new technologies were employed. The use of satellites, for example, became crucial. Satellite images were analyzed for any sign of the plane, but again, the answers were scarce. At the same time, unmanned underwater vehicles and high-tech sonar were used to try to locate what was left of the plane at the bottom of the sea. The ocean's adverse conditions, with its giant waves and extreme depths, made the operation even more challenging. Over time, the search focus shifted to the Southern Corridor region, a vast area of the Indian Ocean. This change was based on data analyses indicating that the plane could have followed this direction. Authorities began working with a new set of information, and the search became more specific, although there was still an immense amount of water to cover. The collaboration between the involved countries was critical, and the exchange of information became a key piece in trying to solve the puzzle. The search for MH370 is a testament to human resilience in the face of adversity. Each new technology employed brought new hope, but also new frustration. As weeks turned into months, the number of vessels and aircraft involved decreased, but the determination to find answers remained. The ongoing effort to discover what happened to Flight MH370 became a symbol of hope, but also of despair, especially for the families waiting for news. Finally, the search for MH370 became a case study in the complexity of sea rescue and search operations. What should have been a routine operation turned into one of the greatest aviation mysteries. The timeline of the disappearance and search is a tapestry of challenges, uncertainties, and emotions that still resonate today. The victims' families continue to seek answers, and the fight for truth continues, even though time has passed. An aviation accident is a tragic event, and the idea that something might have gone wrong with the machinery is always part of the collective imagination. Experts began analyzing every technical aspect of the Boeing 777, but the lack of records of prior issues raised more questions than answers. Another theory that quickly gained popularity was the hypothesis of external interference. The idea of a hijacking or terrorist attack soon emerged. The world was in a tense moment, and the possibility that MH370 had been the target of an act of violence was a narrative many considered plausible. The investigation delved into the passengers' connections and profiles, but again, the lack of concrete evidence left everyone at a dead end. The darkest theory, which also gained prominence, was the hypothesis of the pilot's suicide, Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah. This line of thought was fueled by speculations about the pilot's personal life and emotional state. Some argued that he might have made a tragic decision, leading the plane to its disappearance. However, this theory was widely contested by family members and colleagues, who defended the image of a dedicated and competent professional. The speculation surrounding the pilot sparked intense debate, and many were uncomfortable with the idea that he could be responsible for the tragedy. As theories piled up, experts and authorities began to divide. Some theories were dismissed based on evidence, while others gained traction. This dynamic only heightened the frustration of everyone involved, as each new theory seemed more confusing than the last. With the absence of concrete evidence, the space for speculation seemed endless, turning the case into a real psychological puzzle. While theories about the disappearance of MH370 multiplied, the search for answers continued. Each line of thought opened new paths and raised new questions. What really happened that fateful night? The search for answers became a journey not only to understand what had happened to the plane but also to comprehend the human mind and the complexities of life. And thus, the mystery of MH370 became a story of uncertainties, emotions, and theories that still echo in everyone's memory. The Malaysian government, faced with the disappearance of MH370, encountered a monumental challenge. The initial response was to mobilize its armed forces and request assistance from various countries. The international community quickly united, with countries like Australia, China, and the United States sending ships and aircraft to participate in the search. Each of them brought their own resources and technologies, creating a joint effort that would become a milestone in aviation history. The search began in a relatively small area in the South China Sea, where it was believed that the plane might have crashed. The first operations were carried out using reconnaissance planes that flew over the area searching for any sign of the missing flight. Communication among the countries involved was crucial, with each sharing information and data that could help locate the plane. However, as the search progressed without success, a new analysis of the available data led authorities to reconsider the search area. With the new information, the search was expanded to the Indian Ocean, where it became one of the largest search operations ever conducted in history. When it comes to the disappearance of Flight MH370, the imagination runs wild. There are several theories that try to explain what really happened on that fateful night in March 2014. One of the most common theories is that of mechanical failure. Many people believe that, somehow, the aircraft suffered a malfunction that made it impossible to continue its route. What makes this theory intriguing is that, despite the Boeing 777 being known for its robustness, we cannot ignore that, in aviation, failures can occur in unexpected ways. Thus, the idea that a technical problem may have caused the accident is a possibility that cannot be easily dismissed. On the other hand, there are those who speculate about external interference, such as a terrorist attack or a collision with another aircraft. These scenarios are more dramatic, and the prospect of a deliberate act of sabotage stirs fear in many. Authorities, however, have been cautious in addressing these theories. Although there is no concrete evidence to support the idea of an attack, the mere possibility that something external caused the disappearance generates a frenzy among conspiracy theorists. It's as if the idea that the world might be a more dangerous place than we imagine deeply unsettles us. One of the darkest theories is the hypothesis of the pilot's suicide, Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah. This theory, already heavily debated, suggests that the pilot deliberately diverted the aircraft from its route, leading to a tragic outcome. While this theory has its defenders, many reject it as unfounded speculation. What makes this theory even more complex is the fact that Zahari's behavior, both before and during the flight, showed no signs of psychological problems. In fact, he was considered an experienced and respected pilot, making the idea of an intentional act hard to accept. Whatever theory you choose, the truth is that no expert has been able to provide a definitive explanation. The theories remain in a state of uncertainty, and that is part of what makes the case so fascinating and frustrating at the same time. Aviation authorities, as well as security experts, have spent years trying to understand what happened, but the lack of concrete evidence only fuels speculation. The disappearance of MH370 is a mystery that continues to leave many of us intrigued and perplexed. Lastly, it's interesting to note how the pilot's role, Zahari, became a focal point in discussions about the disappearance. His personal life, motivations, and mental state were widely discussed and analyzed. This raises important questions about how we deal with the figure of the pilot in crisis situations. In a world where every move is observed and analyzed, Zahari's life became a case study that, in a way, reflects our own anxieties and fears regarding control and safety in commercial flights. The search for answers continues, but the questions remain. Theories about the disappearance of MH370 are not mere speculations. They reflect the human effort to seek explanations for the unknown. Aviation, aeronautical engineering, and psychology experts have delved into these theories, assessing their validity and rejecting some due to a lack of evidence. It is fascinating to observe how the scientific community and authorities position themselves regarding these ideas. While some theories, like mechanical failure, have a certain level of acceptance, others, such as the suicide hypothesis, generate controversies and heated debates. One of the challenges in accepting certain theories lies in the complexity of the event itself. What is known is that the aircraft disappeared under circumstances that defy logic. As a result, some explanations seem more plausible than others, leading to a filtering process. Experts often rely on statistical data and risk analyses to highlight the improbability of certain theories. For example, the idea that an experienced pilot like Zahari could have committed suicide through such a risky maneuver is often seen as unlikely, given that the impact of such actions would affect not only him but hundreds of lives. Yet, it's curious how the rejection of certain theories doesn't prevent them from continuing to circulate. The media, social networks, and even documentaries fuel speculation. Often, people are drawn to narratives that offer a simple explanation for a complex event. This only reinforces the idea that truth can be stranger than fiction. Theories about MH370, even when discredited, remain relevant simply because they speak to the fears and uncertainties that we all share. Moreover, the role of authorities in validating or rejecting theories should not be underestimated. When a government body or international organization comments on a matter, it carries considerable weight. The research and investigations are lengthy and complex, and their conclusions are not only based on evidence but also on ethical and emotional considerations. The emotional state of the victims' families, for example, is a factor that influences how theories are presented and discussed. Ultimately, the search for the truth about MH370 continues, and the theories, whether plausible or not, are a byproduct of this process. What becomes clear is that society has an intrinsic need to understand and make sense of what happened. And, meanwhile, the theories about the disappearance are not going away anytime soon. They are part of a human phenomenon that relentlessly seeks answers to life's mysteries. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah is not just a pilot amid a tragedy. He has become a central figure in the narratives surrounding the disappearance of MH370. His life, both professional and personal, has been dissected in search of clues. This raises questions about how we perceive individuals in positions of responsibility and how their actions are interpreted when something goes wrong. Zahari was a respected pilot with years of experience, leading many to wonder, could he really have done something to cause the disappearance of the flight? one of the most debated aspects is Zaharie's personal life. Reports about his separation and emotional problems have been widely discussed, fueling the idea that he might have had reasons to lead the aircraft to a tragic fate. However, it's important to remember that speculation should not replace evidence. Despite personal difficulties, many colleagues and friends of Zaharie have affirmed that he was a dedicated professional, and these statements cannot be ignored. The impact of his personal life on his decisions as a pilot is a complex matter, and what we see here is a classic example of how narratives can become distorted in the search for explanations. Furthermore, the way the media portrayed the pilot also deserves attention. Sensationalism often overshadows reality, turning Zaharie into a villain rather than a human being who, like all of us, had his own struggles. His images, story, and interactions are analyzed and reanalyzed, creating a portrait that may not be true to reality. The need to find a culprit in such a chaotic situation is understandable, but it does not justify how Zaharie's life was exposed and discussed. The analysis of the pilot's behavior ultimately reveals much about our own anxieties and how we deal with tragedies. In any event involving loss of life, the search for someone to blame is almost instinctive. The figure of the pilot, being the captain of the aircraft, often becomes the focus of this search. This applies not only to the case of MH370 but to many other incidents in aviation. The pressure on pilots is enormous, and the expectation that they be infallible is a heavy burden that often does not take into account the complexity of human experience. In the end, the saga of Zaharie Ahmad Shah serves as a reminder that behind every tragedy, there are real people with lives, dreams, and challenges. While theories about the disappearance of MH370 continue to circulate, it is vital to remember that, at the heart of it all, there is a human story that deserves to be respected and understood. When we talk about the disappearance of Flight MH370, one of the most notable events that emerged from this tragedy was the discovery of fragments that, in some way, allowed us to glimpse what might have happened on that fateful night. In 2015, a flaperon was found on the island of Réunion, a small French territory in the Indian Ocean. As the news began to circulate, a wave of hope and despair swept over everyone. What did that piece of metal really mean? To many, it was a symbol that, even amid the mystery, there was something tangible that could provide us with answers. The flaperon, an essential part of a plane's wing, was thoroughly analyzed. Experts confirmed that it belonged to the Boeing 777 from Malaysia Airlines. This confirmation not only brought temporary relief to the families of the victims but also raised more questions. What could have caused the crash? From then on, the search for more fragments intensified, and the world began to pay more attention to what was happening in the depths of the Indian Ocean. The search effort began to transform, not just into a desire to find the plane but also into a desire to understand the story behind it. The scientific studies on the found fragments were equally fascinating. Researchers began analyzing the barnacles, those small crustaceans that cling to underwater surfaces, attached to the debris. This analysis aimed to determine the time the flaperon had been drifting in the ocean and provided valuable insights into ocean currents and possible paths the debris might have taken. This approach has offered clues, albeit small, about where to concentrate search efforts in the vast and deep waters of the Indian Ocean. These discoveries are a testament to the complexity of the search and the enduring hope for answers, even as the mystery of MH370 continues to perplex and haunt those who seek the truth. What seemed like a simple marine organism became a true ally in reconstructing the drift trajectory of the flaperon. The growth of barnacles on the flaperon's surfaces allowed scientists to estimate how long the fragment had been in the water, helping them to create a timeline that could bring us closer to the impact site. This multidisciplinary approach was a breath of fresh air in a case that seemed stuck in a labyrinth of speculation. However, the collection and analysis of debris were not easy tasks. The Indian Ocean is vast and deep, and conditions were often challenging. Search teams faced enormous logistical challenges. Locating the fragments was difficult, and in many cases, accessing remote areas required cutting-edge technology. What seemed like a simple search operation turned into a true test of endurance for both the people and machines involved. Each recovered fragment was like a piece of a puzzle that had to be assembled under pressure and sometimes under the frustration of not finding what was hoped for. As these discoveries emerged, the emotional impact on the victims' families became increasingly evident. Each new fragment found brought back memories and hopes, but also the pain of uncertainty. For many people, the search for answers turned into an endless journey of grief. With every new piece of information, there was a lingering question: will we finally understand what happened? Anxiety and anguish became part of the daily lives of these families, and society, even from a distance, began to feel this emotional weight. Each recovered fragment was not just a piece of the plane, but a reminder of the lives lost. The scientific study and analysis of the circumstances surrounding these fragments not only helped to better understand what might have occurred that night, but also highlighted the urgent need to improve aviation safety. The legacy of MH370 is not only about the lives that were lost, but also about what we can do to ensure that cases like this do not happen again. The MH370 case had profound implications for aviation safety worldwide. After the disappearance of the flight, the aviation industry found itself forced to re-evaluate its monitoring and communication protocols. The reality was that, until then, most airplanes were not continuously tracked. The idea of a plane disappearing without a trace was almost unimaginable. But the tragedy made us realize that technology could and should be better utilized to prevent this from happening again. Changes began to emerge quickly. International organizations, such as the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, started discussions about implementing real-time flight tracking systems. The goal was to ensure that, regardless of the situation, airplanes would always be in contact with air traffic control authorities. This change was not only a response to the MH370 case, but an urgent necessity to enhance aviation safety. For us, the passengers, this new approach brings an additional sense of security, knowing that aircraft are constantly monitored. But the impact of the disappearance of MH370 was not limited only to aviation safety. It also left a deep emotional mark on the victims' families. Their grief turned into a struggle for answers, and many of them united to demand greater transparency and accountability from the authorities. For them, the pain was not only about the loss of loved ones, but also the feeling that, in some way, their lives were being overlooked by a system that seemed unable to provide answers. The disappearance of MH370 became a symbol of struggle and resilience for these families, and society began to recognize the importance of not forgetting these voices. Moreover, the case raised questions about the responsibility of airlines and aircraft manufacturers. There was a growing sense that these groups needed to be more proactive in ensuring passenger safety. The victims' families demanded not only answers but also changes in aviation practices and policies. The legacy of MH370 includes a call to action for aviation companies to adopt a more proactive and transparent stance regarding flight safety. Ultimately, the disappearance of MH370 is not just a story of tragedy but a milestone that shaped the future of aviation. Although there are still many unanswered questions, what happened taught us about the importance of innovation and responsibility. The case reminded us that, even in a world where technology advances rapidly, the safety and protection of human lives must always be the top priority. The legacy of MH370 will continue to influence aviation practices and policies for many years, in an effort to ensure that similar tragedies never occur again. As we wrap up this journey through the mystery of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, it's impossible not to feel a mix of fascination and sadness. How can a plane, with 239 lives on board, simply vanish without a trace? Theories range from mechanical failures to external interventions, but none of them provide the answer we seek. Imagine the anguish of the families who are still waiting for news, for an explanation, for closure. And you, what do you think really happened that fateful night? Could the pilot have played a decisive role, or are we just looking in the wrong direction? With every new piece of information, with every piece of debris found, hope is rekindled. But at the same time, new questions arise. Will we ever know the truth? Will current technology be able to unravel this enigma? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss the theories and explore the possibilities together. And if you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Who knows, next time we might uncover another mystery that defies logic. See you next time.